Bangkok has a particular kind of silence that falls right before something happens. Not the silence of an empty room. Not the silence of a sleeping city. Something more alive than that. A silence with a pulse. A silence that breathes. The markets keep moving. Children keep running barefoot across cracked stone. Vendors call out prices in 3 languages at once. Incense smoke keeps curling lazily from temple rooftops, golden and sweet, mixing with the smell of street food and motor oil, and the particular damp heat that never quite leaves Bangkok, not even at midnight. And yet underneath all of that noise, all of that color and chaos and beautiful disorder, something shifts. The air changes its weight, like the world has been holding its breath for a very long time, and simply forgot to let it go. That was Bangkok, the early months of 1971, and standing at the center of that silence was a man that most people, seeing him for the first time, passing him on the street, would have walked right past without a second glance. Slender. Quiet. Still. Not performing stillness. Not working at it. Just inhabiting it. The way a deep river inhabits its bed. Like stillness was simply his natural state, and everything else, every movement, every strike, every burst of impossible speed, was just the river deciding, briefly, to show you what it was capable of. Bruce Lee. He was 30 years old. Enter. The dragon hadn't been made yet. The world didn't know his name the way it would. Not yet. He hadn't become the legend. He was still, in many ways, simply a man who had trained since childhood with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. A man who had studied under Ip Man and fought on Hong Kong rooftops at 15. A man who read philosophy the way other fighters studied technique, as if the answers to physical questions lived somewhere between Lao Tzu and the space between heartbeats. But in the narrow back streets of Bangkok's Chinatown, where reputation was the only currency that mattered, and respect was something you bled for, word had already spread the way fire moves through dry grass in the height of summer. There is a man here who moves like water and breaks like lightning. And that word reached Nong Mai. Now I need you to understand who Nong Mai was. Really understand him. Because this story only works, it only means something, if you can hold both men in your heart at the same time. His name meant New Silk. The people who knew him remembered that detail with a quiet, private smile, because there was nothing delicate about what he had become, nothing soft, nothing that would remind you of silk in any form. He was born into Bangkok's Chinatown the way many men of his generation were born into it, without options, without cushion, without anyone to catch him if he fell. Poverty in those streets wasn't a background detail. It was the texture of every single day, the smell of it, the sound of it, the weight of it pressing down on your chest from the moment you were old enough to understand what you didn't have. He fought for the first time when he was 11 years old, not by choice, by necessity, and he found, in the terrible clarity of that moment, that he was good at it, better than good, that his body understood something, his mind hadn't been taught yet, that he had a gift, and the gift was this: he could take pain, absorb it, process it, and return it twice as hard without losing himself in the process. He trained for years, early mornings in the heat, late nights by lantern light. He trained on days when his body screamed at him to stop and he told his body it didn't get a vote. He climbed, slowly, painfully, honestly, to the top of a very particular world. The world of men who settle things with their hands. The world where your reputation is the only armor you ever get to wear. He had fought 40 men in serious confrontations across 15 years. He had never lost, not once. And now a Hong Kong filmmaker, an actor whose name was beginning to fill cinema houses across Southeast Asia, whose image on a poster made people stop walking and stare, was moving through the same streets Nong Mai had bled to own. Nong Mai didn't go to movies. He went to fights, He didn't understand the world of cameras and scripts and manufactured drama. He understood only real things, the weight of a fist, the shift of balance, the moment right before a man breaks. He heard the stories about Bruce Lee, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Curiosity. And beneath the curiosity, if he was honest with himself, and Nong Mai was usually honest with himself in the quiet hours, something that resembled unease. He sent word. He gathered 3 of his closest men on an afternoon when the Bangkok light was turning amber and the shadows were growing long across the temple walls. 4 men in total, the kind of number that sends a message before a single word is exchanged. The kind of formation that tells a person, without any ambiguity, we have done this before, and we know exactly how it ends. They moved through the market district with the unhurried confidence of men who own every room they walk into. Street vendors who had been in that area long enough to recognize the signs began quietly, efficiently folding their goods. A woman pulled her daughter closer. A stray dog that had been sleeping in the dust stood up, turned, and trotted away without looking back. The city, which had been loud a moment ago, found its silence again, and Bruce Lee stopped walking. He turned. He looked at all 4 of them, not in sequence, not one by one, but somehow all at once, with the kind of awareness that seems almost impossible until you are standing in front of it, and then it seems like the most natural thing in the world. He didn't widen his stance. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't perform readiness the way men who have learned their fighting from movies perform it. He simply saw them, and Nong Mai, who had walked toward hundreds of men in his life, who had read fear the way other people read. Nong Mai saw that Bruce Lee was not afraid. But more than that, more unsettling than that, Bruce Lee was interested, the way a scientist is interested when an experiment produces an unexpected result, the way a philosopher is interested when a conversation takes a turn they hadn't anticipated. There was no aggression in his eyes. No bravado, no calculation, just genuine, open, unguarded curiosity. Nong Mai had walked toward men who tried to hide their fear, and he had seen through all of them, the jaw tightening almost imperceptibly, the shoulders lifting half a centimeter too high, the eyes, just once, just for the smallest fraction of a second, sliding sideways toward the nearest exit, the breath-changing rhythm in a way the person themselves probably didn't notice. Bruce Lee did none of these things. And that, more than any technique, more than any physical ability, was the first thing that gave Nong Mai pause. Nong Mai spoke first. He was direct because he had always been direct. It was one of the things about him that people respected even when they feared him. He didn't dress his challenge in elaborate words. He stated what he wanted plainly. He had a reputation. Bruce Lee was building one. In this world, in the only world Nong Mai had ever known, such things demanded to be settled in a particular way. He issued his challenge. There was a long moment, the kind of moment that expands in the memory afterward, that becomes longer every time you retell it, because something important happened inside it, and the mind keeps returning to stretch it open and look for everything it contained. And then Bruce Lee spoke. What are you trying to prove? And to whom? It was not a taunt. It was not a deflection. It was not the practiced response of a man running through options in his head and choosing the most strategic one. It was a real question, asked with real curiosity, asked with the specific attentiveness of someone who has spent their life learning that what people say they want and what they actually need are almost never the same thing, asked by a man who understood, through philosophy, through experience, through years of sitting with hard truths about himself, that most confrontations, beneath all the noise and posturing and performance, are really just questions in disguise, questions that have nowhere else to go. Do I matter? Is what I have built real? Were all the years of pain and sacrifice worth something? Does any of this mean anything? The question landed in the silence like a stone dropped into still water, rings spreading outward, reaching the edges of things. One of Nong Mai's men shifted his weight. Another exhaled, slow, barely audible, almost like a sigh. Bruce Lee waited, patiently, without urgency, without any sign that he needed the silence to end. Nong Mai had no answer, not one that he could speak aloud. Not in that alley, not in front of those men, not in front of himself if he was honest, because the question had gone somewhere he hadn't given anyone permission to go, and it would take him a long time to follow it there himself. But something had already changed. He could feel it, and he couldn't name it, and that inability to name it was its own kind of unsettling. What happened next? People who heard the story secondhand tell it differently depending on who told them and how much time had passed. What the men who were there agreed on, always, every time, was this: there was no fight. Bruce Lee offered something else. A demonstration, an invitation. He asked Nong Mai to push against him with genuine force, with full intention, with the accumulated strength of 15 years of training and 40 fights, and every morning Nong Mai had dragged himself out of bed and refused to quit. He didn't brace. He didn't prepare an elaborate counter. He just said, simply and without theater, "Try to move me." Nong Mai looked at him for a moment, and then he accepted. I want you to understand what that acceptance cost him, because it is the most important moment in this entire story, and it is the one that is easiest to miss. Accepting that invitation required something that no fight had ever required of Nong Mai. It required vulnerability, the genuine, unprotected possibility of being shown something he didn't want to see, of having the architecture of his identity tested not by a man who had come to destroy him, but by a man who seemed, improbably, to be offering him something. He placed both hands flat against Bruce Lee's chest, and pushed, with everything. What he felt had no name in any language he knew. He searched for it afterward, in the weeks and months and years that followed that afternoon, and never quite found the right words. There was no wall to push against, but it wasn't emptiness either. It was something in between those things, something that received his force and didn't fight it, and didn't yield to it, but simply redirected it, the way a river redirects around a stone, smoothly, without drama, without effort, that you could see or measure or point to. And suddenly Nong Mai was stumbling forward 3 steps into empty air, his own momentum carrying him past the place where someone had been standing, and there was nobody there. He caught himself, steadied, turned. Bruce Lee had barely moved, a slight shift, a degree or two, just enough. The 3 men behind Nong Mai took 1 step back without meaning to, without deciding to. Their bodies understood something. Their minds were still trying to process, not fear, recognition. They had lived their entire lives inside a single language, the language of force, of pressure, of impact, of the measurement of who could endure more. They were native speakers of that language. They had built their whole identities inside its grammar, and they had just heard a different language spoken for the first time in their lives, one that no one had told them existed, one that made the language they knew feel, suddenly, incomplete. Like finding out the alphabet you learned as a child was missing half its letters and entire worlds of meaning had been living in the gap all along.